Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Oh boy, what's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you while using a Ouija board? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. This one is kinda long. Little backstory. My buddy Roger had a basement. At the foot of the basement stairs was a door. This door closed off the basement or pool and darts room from the rest of the house. The only problem is after so many years the door swelled up and would no longer close. Trying to close the door was a task. It had swelled so much that the flooring had been gouged out from the door scraping so hard. Now for the story. Roger, myself, and two other friends are playing around with the board in the dark. After about 15 minutes of goofing off, Roger's mother calls him up for dinner. He doesn't go. More shenanigans ensue for maybe 5 to 10 more minutes. Roger's mother gets heated. We can now hear her stomping across the house above us. She gets to the stairwell and screams, "Roger, get your ass up here for dinner right now." Roger responds, Okay, give me 2 more minutes." Mother responds, "Don't just stand there at the foot of the stairs, get up here." Now here's the problem. We're roughly 15 to 20 feet from the door. There's no way she sees Roger. Roger exclaims, "We're sitting at the bar." And the moment the word bar leaves Roger's mouth, the door that nobody could close slams shut with a purpose. The 4 of us immediately went from joking around to screaming and panic, as we couldn't open the door. Roger's dad jumped in through the basement window and had to kick the door through to open it. I never went back to Roger's house. I thought my friend was moving the thing, so I challenged the ghost to show itself outside of the game. I said, "Do something else, run up and down the stairs or something." We were in the basement and instantly heard loud, angry stomping on the stairs. Nothing was there when we looked. Eventually, we ran upstairs and asked the rest of the family if they had come downstairs. When they said no, we asked if they heard it. They hadn't. I grew up in a fairly rural part of Alaska. One of my close friends lived out a ways, and because her mother was a bartender and bars didn't close until like 4 a.m., was alone a lot. Her trailer was absolutely shitty. The foundation had sunk, the pipes froze up and didn't work, and the heater couldn't keep up with the Alaskan winter. The windows always iced over on the inside. We were maybe 14, and one of Nikki's boyfriends brought over the Ouija board and dared us all to use it. Most of our friends were too cool to admit they were scared, but I was mega chicken. I never even did Bloody Mary, I was too afraid. They all settled in to play with the board. I went to the little back room where their rabbits, they raised them for fur and meat, lived to read a book. It wasn't exactly warm, but it wasn't cold either, and Nikki's sister also came, so it was just the 2 of us and the bunnies. Every now and again we'd hear a shriek from the living room, but for the most part, nobody bothered us, so we were fine. At least until Nikki came out to see us with the Ouija board. She pulled out one of the smaller rabbits while laughing hysterically, put it on the board. It sat still for a few seconds, and then it rolled over and it just died. Bunnies do that, get so scared their heart explodes, but the timing was seriously horrific. I called my mom back and told her I'd walk home if she didn't come get me, even with the awful roads and late night and moose, and I left. I didn't go back for months. Nikki swore up and down, and even to this day, that she didn't think it would work, that they'd ask the spirit to show them how strong it was by killing something, but insists that's exactly what happened too. It was only after summer set, and the sun was out all the time that I went back at all, and I never went back in winter. It's still a super creepy place. Well, regardless of the Ouija board itself, this doesn't exactly sound like a great place to spend the winter anyway, and pretty much should be demolished. I jokingly asked a demon to take control over my body and make me successful for a price I'd have to pay later. 12 years later, and I'm successful with just a GED to my name, and magically everything seems to work out in my favor every time. I'm still waiting on the punishment. However, when I gamble, I always lose, no matter what. Worst luck ever. Can't even win 20 bucks. I always tell people at the casino to bet against me. I watch them constantly win hundreds every time I go. I'm hoping that was the determined price I had to pay was a gambling curse. Otherwise, I'm mortified of the price I'll have to pay in the future. In high school, I knew a group of kids who were into ghost hunting. They would go to places that were known to be haunted with a Ouija board and try to talk to ghosts. They swore they talked to the dead, but no one believed them. One day they show up at school and show us this video on their Razr phone. It was a video of them at this old haunted restaurant that had been closed for years. The video showed their Ouija board. They were all sitting around it when suddenly that triangle thing shot across the board by itself. We were all lost for words. Later that day, we went over to one of the kids' houses to smoke. He had some bud in his backpack, but he couldn't find it because he had so much shit in it. So he opens it and dumps everything out, and out comes the triangle thing with fish line hooked up to it, lol. Girl sleepover. We asked if we could exit the game and say goodbye. It wouldn't move to say goodbye, so we all just took our hands off. The moment we did, 2 pictures hanging on different walls just fell down. Unisex sleepover. Big group of us all had our hands on it. We all felt this electric shock go up our hands and we all screamed and let go. Nothing else happened, but the vibe of the party changed for a bit because everyone felt really disturbed. There were 4 of us. I was around 16 or 17 years old when my friend came over and showed us the Ouija board he just found at a garage sale. Super cliche, I know, but we were all stoked to try it out. Went to my basement and started to set up. My basement had a dividing curtain to the laundry area, and if you were near the laundry machines, you couldn't see the rest of the basement. This is important. I started assuming I was being effed with, so I stood up and went to the laundry area with a pen and paper. I wrote down the number 18 on this paper where nobody could see me. I then, word for word, asked what did I write down. I didn't say what number. I didn't say how many characters, just asked what I wrote. From behind the curtain, I just heard the planchette moving, and all my friends at the same time said, 18? I just walked out and said, yep, and put the paper down, walked upstairs, and rarely went to the basement again. Over 10 years ago, I was in a bad place mentally. I'm a firm believer in the occult and believe in a higher power, ghosts, and the supernatural. At the time, I had collected a few Ouija boards and was really into trying to speak to the dead. After several months of feeling like I was a medium, I was starting to feel off. I was having horrendous thoughts that were out of character for me. Thoughts of suicide, rape, murder, and torture, to name some of the tamer images I was having. It got so bad that my hands were bleeding because I could not stop washing them. The guilt I felt from those thoughts was taking me over, and I thought I was going insane. It was around this point that I knew I needed to have a conversation with my mom about what was happening. So I told her everything, and she told me I needed to see a doctor. I began researching OCD and the effects of it. A week or so after confiding in my mom, I went and saw our family doctor. At 16, I was terrified at the idea of being mentally ill. I nervously told the doctor everything that I had been feeling, and he fills out a prescription for Prozac and recommends I see a shrink. I take the paper he gives me and shrug home. I tell my mom what he said and said the plan to my road to recovery. A few days later, while researching some stuff about Ouija boards, trying to take my mind off of things, I come across an article about something called demonic oppression. Holy F, this was me. This was the definition of what was happening to me. My symptoms were all on par with what the article was referencing. Basically, it's the idea of not being possessed and having a demon in you, but the idea of one being around you, trying to bring you down as much as possible. It can lead to demonic possession. The #1 route cause believed to entice a negative energy to harass you, playing with Ouija boards. I then began researching how to be rid of this hypothetical oppression. Get rid of your boards and make sure to dispose of them correctly. I began to do so, breaking the board and separating the pieces, making sure the pieces never touch when disposed of, and to separate the planchettes as well. I put it all in separate bags, and it sat in our garage for a day or two. Garbage day rolls around, and I hear the truck outside around the corner making its stops. Shit, I forgot I had kitty litter stuff to throw out, so I run downstairs and head to the front door. My dad stops me at the bottom of the stairs and proceeds to mock me for having to clean up cat shit. I ignore him, not making eye contact as he was annoying me and full on laughing at me at this point. I dart past and throw the shit into our bin to see the Ouija board bags being put into the garbage truck. When I enter the house, it's quiet. I yell to my dad and no one answers. 15 seconds go by and my mom comes in from work. She says hi and I ask her where dad went. She tells me he hasn't been home yet from work and that he had to pick something up from the grocery store. I tell her he must have forgot to stop on the way home because I just spoke to him in person like 2 minutes ago. She said that's impossible because she was just talking to him on the phone. I run to a phone and call him. Sure enough, he's still at the A&P and he totally confused with what I am talking about. I hang up in complete shock. No one else was home and it 100% looked and sounded like my dad. I know that was my last hooray for the thing that so much enjoyed making me feel like the devil's toilet paper. After the boards were taken away, all my symptoms stopped, like overnight stopped. I'm scared to think of what I might have seen had I looked my father in the eyes that day. If you're going through a hard time, emotionally, physically, or mentally, I think you should seek medical professional help and not a board game. This is a not me but, however, I feel it's worth sharing. My late father was a priest, and in one of his parishes, he was on first-name terms with several members of the local police force. He got a call from one of them one night asking him to come out to a house just outside of town, where the police had gone to investigate what was called a noise complaint. Turned out that several young men in their early 20s had been messing around with a Ouija board. One of them ended up in a psychiatric hospital for the best part of a year, and my dad told me that he stepped into the house, he felt more scared than he had ever done before, even during his military service. He said a prayer in the house. There's actually a little book with it in. I got it after Dad passed away, and he told me that if I ever took one piece of advice from him seriously, it would be to never use a Ouija board. I never have. Me and two other girls were best friends at 10 or so years old. We went to one of the girls' homes to hang out. They had recently put her bedroom in the basement, and while it looked nice, the basement outside the room was bare and used for storage. It's hard to remember the details, but we got the Ouija board out and started messing with it. Everything got really quiet all of a sudden, and then the three of us received some sort of shock. A metaphysical shock is the best, most accurate way to describe it. We stopped playing immediately. The girl whose home it was wouldn't talk about it and stopped being friends with us. My senior year of high school, I went with a friend to confront a spirit using a Ouija board. There were always haunting occurrences in the music and theater hallway. I had seen a ghost in the auditorium, sitting in the empty audience gallery. Anyway, the spirit came and said its name was Charlotte. She was hanged, lynched for being a witch, right on what became the high school about 130 years later. Against my protest, the friend who brought me, as well as a couple of people who claimed to be witches themselves, set about making a summoning circle to get this ghost to appear. Whether or not this would have worked, I sabotaged it so they couldn't summon her. Pagan here. I just wanted to give a bit of advice on dealing with spirit boards because people seem to be deathly afraid of them. 1. Always say goodbye. This is the #1 thing that gets people in trouble with inviting spirits. If you don't close the portal, they can't leave, and that's not fun for anyone, including the spirit. 2. When you are invoking or inviting, be specific. Do not just say anyone or anything, because that's inviting anyone or anything good or bad. Try setting boundaries like, I'm inviting good spirits only, or I invite anyone with good intentions to this space. 3. Be respectful. If you're trying to contact a ghost of someone who was brutalized and killed, probably don't ask things like, were you raped? Or things that would make a spirit upset. Would you want a random stranger asking about your deepest traumas? Probably not. Give them the respect you would give if they were living. 4. When contracting non-humans and origin spirits, be respectful. They've been here longer than you. Don't invite demons. Yes, I'm even talking to the Satanists. Regardless of your relationship, keep their innate abilities in mind. It will affect you. Well, this was a good post. Really good, sound advice. May I add 1 to that list? 5. Don't use a Ouija board. I was sitting alone in my room at midnight. My mom had experienced some ghostly things and I never believed it. Then I told her I wanted to experience something like her, but at the same time I would probably be scared. She said that I need to be careful what I say, and I kind of laughed it off. About 3 weeks later, I was awake till 4 a.m. I felt kind of weird, like I wasn't alone. I told myself that I'm just imagining things. I went outside of my room to charge my phone. Above that cable, we have a light that is powered by batteries. A few minutes later, the light turned on, and then about 3 seconds later, it turned off again. I started panicking since I knew that the light didn't have any batteries for months. The next day, I tried to somehow make it light up again by waving at the sensors. Never worked. The Ouija board was always super active when I used it with one of my friends in particular, like quickly and constantly moving, swaying back and forth in between questions. We always connected with a spirit named Zay. I believe it was real, as she's not the kind of person to fake something like that and is very spiritual. Once, when we were teenagers, we used it and my friend legit got possessed. It was scary. Just the two of us were using the board on the floor of my room, with a third friend watching wearily from the bed. She said she just felt weird. Eventually it lifted. She a little shaken up afterwards, but okay. We started using salt and candles to place a protective ring whenever we used the board after that experience. I found a really old one that belonged to my dad when he was a kid, in some junk that was in our garage. I asked him if I could have it, and he said I could. On the weekends, I would stay at my mom's house. They divorced when I was very young, and my mom and I had both experienced some strange things at her house. So, when I got the board, I told my friends that we should play it at my mom's house on Halloween. We took the board, but didn't tell my mom what we were doing because she would have been pissed. Nothing happened when we actually played, and we kept blaming each other for moving it. My mom walked in, caught us, and flipped out. She was yelling for us to get the damn thing out of the house, and she was serious. So I gave it to my boyfriend at the time, and that was that. But I swear, after that night, all kinds of paranormal experiences in that house. I would wake up in the middle of the night and hear my mom's TV blaring, and figured she fell asleep with it on. I'd walk back to turn it off, wasn't even on. That happened often. She also had this little antique-looking lamp that you would touch to turn on, and touch again to make it brighter. It had 3 levels of light, and if you touched it after the brightest, it would turn off again. It would randomly turn up or off. Another time, my mom had left to go grocery shopping. It was like 6 p.m. and in the winter, so it was just getting dark outside. I was conversing in her kitchen. I, with another one of my friends that would stay the weekend sometimes. I can't remember what we were talking about, but she asked something like, "But aren't you afraid of it hearing you?" To which I replied, "What? The ghost? Nah." After a while, you kind of get used to it. Right as I finished saying those words, the lights flickered off, on, off, and then back on. Not once, but twice. We both screamed and waited on the porch for my mom to get back. So many experiences in that house, but I'll just give one more. So I woke up again in the night to what I thought was my mom's TV again, and like always, I went to turn it off, but it wasn't on. So I go to the bathroom, and I'm sitting there peeing. The bathtub was directly across from the toilet, and I look up, and there's a shimmer, best way I can think to describe it, towards the front of the tub. Not in the tub, but next to it. It looked the way things look off in the distance, when it's really hot outside. You know, like the way the waves of heat make things look squiggly. So I reach out and put my hand there, and it was super warm air, but only in that spot. I started hearing the TV again, and ran back to the living room. I slept on the couch. When I get in there, I see on the digital alarm clock that it's 3:04 a.m., which means all that happened at what would have been 3 a.m. I've only prayed as hard as I did that night a couple of other times in my life. Scary AF. Me and 4 other friends in high school were in one of the girls' basements. It was huge, with a workshop, living room, a bathroom, and a couple bedrooms. We had a Ouija board one of the girls got as a joke. We put our fingers on the little thing and asked a couple questions, and it actually moved, but wasn't saying anything. Well, she had a thick door going to the backyard that had 3 locks on it. The one on the door handle and 2 deadbolts, since it was a wealthy neighborhood in our town, and her dad just wanted the extra deadbolt. All 3 locks were 100% locked, as we had just closed it and locked it after smoking some weed outside. We asked the board if any spirits could let us know they were here. That locked door swung open so fast and hard, it hit the wall and left a little mark on the door handle, and all the lights flickered, and the TV turned off. A door with 3 effing locks locked swung open. It didn't help that it was storming a little, but we don't get huge storms where we live very often, just your average thunderstorm. We put the board up, locked the door again, and all 5 of us slept on the couch with every single light on that night. I grew up Baptist, and I do believe in evil spirits and such, so I was terrified and never touched a Ouija board ever again. It's been about 6 years now, and I don't think I'll ever forget it or forget the fear I felt that night. Friend and I tried one when we were around 12 years old. She had been seeing an old lady, watching her sleep. I thought it was just night terrors or something. So we were talking to someone with the board and asked it to do something besides answer questions. A little green army man that my friend had on her intercom flew across the room, and it hit my friend in the back. We threw it in the garbage, then went downstairs to tell our moms what happened. When we came back, the damn thing was on her dresser. Fast forward 20 years, I was in town, and her parents told me I could stay in her old bedroom for the weekend. I'm not ashamed to admit that I was a 32-year-old grown-ass woman sleeping with a light on. Yes, you can choose to believe this or not, but this is what happened. My grandmother used to live in a century home built in the 1800s. We knew at least 2 people had actually died in the house, and everyone has seen some weird stuff in there. My uncles, my grandma, even me. But those are another story. In short, the house was creepy and creaky and old. It had a root cellar and some rooms upstairs that the dog she had later, years after this happened, would stand and bark at and refuse to enter. There was one room we called the study that was wood paneled with this horribly creepy forest mural in it. My friend and I were having a sleepover and messing around with a Ouija board, even though my very suspicious grandma warned us not to. We were sliding it around and asking it stupid questions, but then we decided to really try it and close our eyes, hovering our hands very lightly on the placard. All of a sudden, there was the loudest bang on the study door that I have ever heard in my life, like someone had ran full force into it with their shoulder and slammed all their weight into the door. It was horrifying, and we all screamed. It was honestly something I will never forget, because I know that if someone had actually slammed into that door with enough force to make the sound it did, that door would have opened. My grandma ran downstairs, asking us what happened and if we heard the noise. She was in her late 60s when this happened, not capable of wanting to freak us the F out. At the time, she had no dogs, only an elderly cat.